Hi, welcome to Theology Thursdays, where we look at the upcoming Sunday's readings and see how they fit in with each other and what they might mean in our lives throughout the week. My name is Nathan Stell, and today I'm not joined by anybody, but that's okay. I'll do my best as we look at the readings today. The first reading is from Leviticus 13, and it's the general rule. It's from the Old Testament, one of the first books in the Old Testament. It talks about the rule of people with leprosy and how communities dealt with them, how they had to go to the priests and say they had leprosy, and then they couldn't be with the rest of the community. They had to proclaim that they had leprosy so that people could stay away from them, because people didn't want to get infected with it. So that's the first reading. The second reading is from 1 Corinthians, and basically it's Paul saying, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. And then that glory of God is tied intrinsically to the salvation of the people around you, helping other people see God, know God, and be saved. And then the gospel is from Mark, the Gospel of Mark, on chapter 1, and it's the story continuing in the story of Jesus as he begins his ministry and starts healing people. In this Sunday's gospel, he cures the man with leprosy. So I titled this talk, "What Makes Jesus Special?" And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But I started to think about how we can get lost in rules, how it's so easy for us to get lost in the way we do things, in the way that we're outlined to do things, and that people say we have to do things. How many times have we gotten lost in the details of an issue, right, and forgotten the main thing? And this is especially a problem when we lose sight of people, right? And people are usually the main part of the issues that we face in our lives. So in the first reading, we see the rules regarding lepers, and they set up these rules to protect, on one hand, to protect people from getting leprosy, but right away, when we're talking about people with leprosy, a lot of times we say lepers, right? Oh, that leper over there, or the Jesus healed the leper. Like even in the titles that we say, Jesus healed the leper, instead of Jesus healed the man with leprosy or the woman with leprosy. And so why do we call them lepers, or why do we say things like hobos or white trash or gays or anything like that? Like we can tend to lump people into a title, into a grouping. When we're so used to turning people into whatever label, that it makes this easy for us. Sometimes it makes it easy for us to be a little lazy. Sometimes, and often it makes it easy to turn that label into a judgment. And it's either a good judgment or a bad judgment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad one, but sometimes it's a good one as well. You can say, hey, there's my football player. Hey, there's my musician. Hey, there's my dancer. Or there's that dancer. Or he's a trumpet player. That's what he is. Not that's what he does. That's what he is. And we probably don't mean to, but it's really easy to package our value for an individual or for a group of people in the way that we refer to them and what we call them. Just as we do when we say more negative things, like there's a hobo on the street over there, or there's that troublemaker in class again. And the problem is that we're taking what should be and what actually is an immutable value of every individual person, and we're immediately attaching it to something that all too easily can change. Are you no longer going to greet that boy if he stops being a football player, or if he stops being a great football player? Are you going to say it differently? Oh, there's my football player. Are you going to say it differently? How's your tone going to change? Or the dancer, are you no longer, if that person stops being a dancer or stops taking dance, are you going to change your label for them? Are you going to change the way that you greet them? Especially if you wanted them to be a dancer. We do this with our kids a lot too. Are you going to look at that man differently if he gets a job and stops being homeless? And why would you look at him differently if that happens? So the question again is, what makes Jesus different? So in the first reading, again in Leviticus, we read about the rules. We read about what people did with other people that had leprosy and how they had to act within society or outside of society, more specifically. And in the gospel, we see I was going to say a leper, we see a person with leprosy come up to Jesus and say, if you want to, you can make me clean. You can cure me. And Jesus says, I will do it. I'll do it. And he cures him. And so it seems that one thing that makes Jesus different, and this is all, I mean, we're all Catholics, so this is all on top of the obvious answer that, well, Jesus was God. And that's a very, that's like the kind of the first answer. And that's a really easy answer, obvious answer, accessible answer. But if we look a little differently, being God, maybe starting from there, what makes him different from so many other people and from so many other people in the Bible that came before him? And so he knew the rules, he knew the Jewish customs, and he knew the Bible. Definitely, he knew the Torah, but he didn't stay away from the leper, and he didn't enforce, those rules when the leper came up to him and said, "You can make me clean." What he did instead was he looked at him as a person. He didn't look at him as a leper. He looked at him as a human being who had an affliction, and he said, "Yeah, I'll cure you." And the weird, kind of ironic thing is that by curing him and helping the man with leprosy reunite with his community, Jesus ended up being pushed away from that same community. Upon curing him, he told them to do what the law required. Sometimes people would kind of, not like a cold, but people are sick and then they get better. So some people with leprosy would get better and they would stop having leprosy, and then they would have to go present themselves to the priests and kind of like restate their state in life, their position in life, saying, okay, I don't have leprosy anymore. So Jesus said, okay, go to the priest and tell him you don't have leprosy anymore. And don't tell anybody that I cured you. Don't tell anybody about this, okay? Just tell them that you're clean and everything will be fine. And Jesus' idea was, look, his purpose was to reunite people. His purpose was to bring the kingdom to earth, bring heaven to earth. His purpose was to fix the relationships, the brokenness on earth, right? His purpose wasn't to become a rock star, right? It was the opposite of wanting to become a rock star. So he said, don't tell anybody about this. And as I was thinking, why would he say that? It gives us a hint in the end of that gospel, because it says the man went away, began to publicize the whole thing. He spread the report abroad, so much so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. And so Jesus had to remain outside in deserted places, but people kept on coming to him from everywhere. So the ironic thing is, in healing the man and reuniting his relationship with the community, he actually inadvertently distanced himself from the same community, because he couldn't get close without people just rushing him. He couldn't enter the community anymore. He couldn't just be one with the people anymore. He became this rock star, right? And he had so many of the issues that celebrities today have to deal with. They can't go anywhere without being having photos taken of them and having people rush them on the street, and they can't really. It's really hard to have privacy, I imagine. I'm not a celebrity, so that's I can only see from afar. But that seems to be what Jesus was going through. So, and then the other thing that makes Jesus different is how he handled that celebrity status. He kept on having, like we were talking about last week, he kept on having to go back and pray to God in what must have been an hour, maybe 2 hours that he had free every day. He was constantly bombarded with people asking him to heal them, and he had to sleep, and he had to eat, and he had to do all the other things that all of us have to do. So in those precious moments that he might have had alone, he didn't use them to take a break in the ways that many of us might take breaks. He used it to pray and to recharge, and as he was tempted, like all of us are tempted, I would imagine he probably also used it to ground himself and to humble himself and say, wait, this is something that I have to do. This is my Father's work, as he often said, and this isn't anything that I can let, that I should let get to my head or stop me from doing what I'm here to do. So Jesus was tremendously different than so many of us. But that being said, I don't think he would want us to hold on to that difference for too long. I think he would want us to see the way he was, and to continue reflecting on how he was, and then for those reflections to lead us to be closer to him, to lead us to do those things that he would do, to lead us to have those moments of prayer daily, getting closer with God, and letting that closeness inform our every moment decisions. And I would imagine that he would just want us to allow him to elevate us to be more Christ-like and to be indeed Christ to the people around us. So just as a final thought, and I'm going to saying this to myself as well, next time we see someone on the street, we can really try to recognize that he or she is a person with a name and a family and a whole history and desires and talents and skills. And next time we see our sons or our daughters or our brothers or our parents, we can think about how we refer to them. And we refer to them by the things that they do or by the things that they're good at? Or do we just acknowledge their wholeness as a person and acknowledge the things that they're good at as well, but really kind of think of them as a person with value, and a value that doesn't change no matter what's going on in their lives. So with that in mind, this is a little short video, but thanks for watching. Have a great week and see you next time.